Or did we just go live? Oh, rock and roll. We are staying warm. The wood burner is rocking and rolling. And so yeah, no big deal, no concerns here so far, but it's cold as crap outside. I will say, as much as I've been acclimating forcefully to the weather, this is still freaking cold. You know, Joe X goes and swims in frozen rivers, and he's doing a lot of that training right now, and he's internally motivated to do that. And I don't think I could do that unless pretty much my life was on the line.
Training for like Operation Barbarossa 2.0 though, like so.
That's true. He's a wild man.
He doesn't have some of those not. That's a different story. Hey, we already got a couple commenters. And yeah, what's up, Terry? And Heavy said basically shot himself in the ass and had a golden opportunity and just kind of shit on it to scam some people, basically.
So
So
I actually just texted John a couple days ago, and I just said, I'm not sorry for anything that I said or did, but I do hope that you pull through whatever it is that you're struggling with. And he hasn't responded, and
I
so
think he has a lot of struggles. I don't know exactly what those struggles are. I've heard a few different things from a few different people, but and probably in all reality, all three of them are probably
yeah.
right, and from my guess.
And what's crazy, and I think what is telling is, last time I checked, John's last video is still hyping me wearing my shirt. He hasn't even pulled content down. And so I think whatever it is that he's fighting with, it is uh, enveloped him so entirely that he doesn't even care to do damage control. He can just walk away with it and be happy. So that was bizarre. Uh,
Well, when I was talking to him, still he half the stuff, and I pointed this out to other people. Half the stuff that he was sending me was straight up gibberish. Like it would be like multi-paragraph long, and it almost. I mean, I hate to say it, but it almost seemed like meth mouth. I hate to see that, but that's just kind of my space. But guys, tonight the live stream, we're going to be talking about uh, some things to be potentially preparing for. There's a lot of things kind of going on, and of course, things are potentially ramping up, but at the same time, there's also an illusion of things ramping up, and they obviously want you to react in a certain way. And so, I think everybody should always influencer types, but they don't offer real world solutions, and they don't actually live by the lifestyle that they seemingly promote. I mean, hell, let's just pick on 4 foot nothing Nick Fuentes while we're at it. He'll hype up all this conservative, conservative, blah blah blah, stupid shit, but at the same time, he lives in Chicago. Like, why in the hell would you live in the most Babylonian Sodom and Gomorrah? Any of the stuff that he supposed, of course, now he's hyping up Jeffrey Epstein and other weird degeneracy
What's
too.
what's
So
really crazy about Nick Fuentes is he was never really secretive about being a homosexual or a pedophile. It was always there.
no, he wasn't. And there's guys there's been a handful of us that's been calling it out for a while, and there's some people that like acts like they're all like shocked and like, oh my god, like, or they still deny it when it's like the guy is telling you straight up.
So and the thing is that concerns me is, of course, the things that people say that they like Nick Fuentes for, I like too. I'm on board, guys. But let's have a little bit of discernment when somebody's always with their hands, like a little ephema boy. He's constantly,
Hell, kind of weird,
yeah. So,
like
but
effeminate.
so he's always been pretty much openly a homosexual and pedophile. And the irony is that the culture he's
And
made his name on speaking out against US support of Israel, which is something that needs to be spoken out about, and kind of like hating the Jews, okay? And yet he is a perfect example of the Jewish agenda and is supporting every part of the Talmud and the Talmud's agenda to include having Joseph Stalin as one of his, idols or heroes. So you've got this gay little communist masquerading around as conservative, and the ultimate irony is this was a big part of MAGA, which was supposed to be conservative, which we knew was never conservative in the first place either. So it's just a big 3-letter agency psyop freaking gay fest.
well, the thing about it too is that they create these situations and they create these fake characters to kind of lead us astray. It's just like even like Ben Shapiro, and I know a lot of people are seeing right through Ben Shapiro these days, but it doesn't even take a lot of work to look into it and find that his ancestors were directly involved with the Bolshevik Revolution, murdering, helping murder millions of Christians. And we're supposed to take this guy as like, oh, this is our conservative icon, you know. And it's kind of like I said on our last live stream. The devil does not mind taking 2 or 3 or 4, 1,000 years to convince people of something. He's working on a long agenda, and so if I have to spend a couple generations to convince people that a Bolshevik is a conservative, then so be it. But they're still going to push a Bolshevik agenda.
Well, and you have to think about it also. We're talking about an entity that knows God personally. And so we are looking through what's happening in our world through this microscopic lens like an ant, whereas the antichrist or Satan himself has a massive agenda, a list of tasks that are going to be accomplished, and that list of tasks can be over a period of 2000 or any 1,000 years of time to accomplish what needs to be accomplished, and we only live this long. You're not going to see the whole thing. And so the true irony to me is even when you look at your noticers, as we're called now, right? Your
And
conspiracy theorists.
I'm going to throw in a little side note on that. I obviously, you know, you and I both agree on the whole, a lot of the elements of the noticing, quote unquote, but there's kind of a certain point that it itself has become a psyop in its own way.
And that's what I was gonna say is um when you realize how corrupt something is, when you see the false flags and you think, how do they suck so bad that they can't even pull this off right? You're supposed to see that. Or for instance, you look at what a degenerate lying whore Erica Kirk is, and some
Yeah.
dog on Instagram is doing the research for you. Everybody wants somebody else to do the research for them so they feel like they know what's going on. And it's like, oh, I have this secret knowledge about Erica Kirk, and here's her being a whore in a bikini with these other dudes, and this and that and the other thing. You're meant to see that. And so the average person is working a 9 to 5 job. The average idea of a good time is to chemically alter your brain to convince yourself that you're happy and enjoying yourself. And everybody wants to be wise in their own eyes. They don't want to put forth the effort. So they think since they watched a reel on Instagram of a dog doing research, that now they have the secret information without having the discernment and the ability to take a third person perspective to realize that they're supposed to see it. They feel like they're special and they've got secret information.
Well, a lot of the Hebrew roots, and I've told you this before, or, me and my brother, my dad, we kind of grew up with Hebrew roots, and it wasn't called that back then, but when you look at it, that's basically what it was. And but that's a lot of what they really buy into is like, oh, we know like the secret name of God, and we know the secret Hebrew, and it's like it's a bunch of Hebrew gibberish. Hebrew
It's
was
not
basically a dead language.
right. And when it comes to that, it's just Gnosticism. And I have a hard time. People will send me messages about how they use science and mathematical algorithms and all of these secret number sequences in the Bible to prove the truth of God through physics. And I'm like, freaking stop. Stop. Like you're not convincing a scientist of God by doing this. You look like a lunatic. The people who are making the opposite argument that you are can come up with the same kind of goofball conclusions by mixing all kinds of letters and mathematical equations together. And this search for secret knowledge, this Gnosticism,
It leads you to masonry and the occult
right?
and basically witchcraft. Essentially, is what it
It's just a
leads you
bad
to.
deal. It's just a bad deal.
And I'm going to say I know that from experience. Like just kind of dabbling down in that road, you can find yourself going into the occult and witchcraft and not even really fully realize that you went down that road
Hmm.
without having to take a step back and get grounded back in Jesus Christ and realize like what the hell was I doing, like type of thing. And
So
so
we're going into the solution here, um, but I think we to kind of bring the context that we're talking about for the solution back to the original question. We see things going on wrong, and the irony here is it doesn't matter who you are. If you could be a doggone communist in this country, or a FUD fake patriot, NRA wanker, or whatever, and you look at this country and, man, this is all gone to hell. We can see the problems. You can look at Minneapolis. You can look at the ICE raids on either side of the argument. It doesn't matter. You can see the issues. And so the problem is you can also see that anybody can also see that certain of these issues are being set up. Okay. And the problem is the way that you are meant to cope with that is you are meant to look for hope. So you look for Nick Fuentes, you look for Donald Trump, you look for that communist in New York, whatever spectrum you're on, it doesn't matter as long as you start searching for hope within the system. So long as you are mentally invested in the system and hope on something on earth, the psyops can be on both ends. The controlled ops can be on either end. The controlled ops can be on both ends at the same time, as we see so often. There doesn't need to be any consistency. There doesn't need to be any clarity. Alex Jones one day is a Catholic. The next day he's an evangelical Protestant. The next day he's a Jew. It doesn't matter. People won't pay attention. People don't care. People don't have the attention span as long as this person is going to give them hope. And so,
Yep.
what we were just getting into is the solution, which I would say, obviously, your hope should be in Jesus Christ. And if that is where your hope is, how do you look at finding solutions, not to the world's problems, but to your problems and what the world is going to make your problems?
Well, I'm going to kind of throw this out there too. I personally think, and I think we started to see this a lot with the COVID thing, but it's been going on for a like longer than even me and you've been alive. But people who are so easily persuaded by the artificial hero character, I think we're seeing that those same people, when push comes to shove and everything's going to hell, they will buy into the antichrist type of character
Oh, no
very
question.
easily as well. And you know, whether or not, you know, the COVID jab or whatever was the mark of the beast or whatever, or that was at least a beta test, you know, the for damn sure. Uh, okay, actually, you two boys, good fellows in the knife community. I thought Big John was a good one too. Had so much, and that's the thing that sucks with John is I think John had a lot of potential.
I agree.
Like that's the part that is the most frustrating with that whole thing. And I feel
You were
like I
rooting for John, and
well, I feel like I stuck my neck out for him more than once and kind of got dragged through the mud more than once.
Well, and
And
that's why I
so,
have to do my video, especially because of the situation with Survive. And I don't know if I talked about my conversation with Guy Seaford and Guy throwing John under the bus, but that's when I started asking questions because I was like, is Guy a liar? Yes. Do I have the discernment to know where he's lying and where he's telling the truth? Probably not. But some of the things that he was saying about John, I was like, I bet that's true.
yeah.
And um, so,
Well, it's
anyways,
almost like so detailed that it's like, how can it be a lot? You know what I mean? Like at a certain point.
right.
But
It sucks. It sucks overall. I hope he gets that crap squared away. But and so let's see. Okay, so in the hero worship, God's word says that the delusion will be so strong that if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. And so we have been um, programmed to be looking for this hero character. Hernandez, no, nobody's heard from John.
no, nobody's heard
A
from him.
long time. But so that is exactly the direction that we're going in. The Antichrist will be hailed essentially statistically universally as a hero bringing the world to peace. Um,
Well, and I feel
But
like that's why they're trying to create such a chaos. But I also feel like they're trying to essentially destroy all the religions, the main world religions, all at the same time to essentially not only bring it together, but I actually think they're going to actually kind of create something new through it as well. And this is my wild speculation. So, guys, don't hold me 100% to this. It's just wild speculation. But I'm going to call the new religion apotheotheism. So, they're going to essentially use the same lie and the Garden of Eden as ye shall be as gods as the mantra to get people into the new religion. And I think it's going to be kind of a technological and new agey Masonic Judeo kind of blur to get people to believe that they can ascend to their own godhood with like basically technology and genetics.
we have the groundwork for that already.
Yes. And
And through the Mormon church and through other things as well. And so I would certainly say that you're right. And I would not say scripturally this is the case, but I think logically it's probably a good estimate to believe that the world that we live in will become closer and closer to the world as it looked before the flood when it comes to our society,
well,
and
and
closer and closer
I
to Sodom and Gomorrah.
I totally agree with that. I think the big disconnect with a lot of people, especially the Disney World Christians, is they don't comprehend what the days of Noah actually look like. They believe, oh, there was just a lot of sin and stuff. If that was just the case, then God would have destroyed the earth over and over and over again, and we'd be back there even now. But when it says that Noah was perfect in his generation, I personally believe that people were so twisted at that point that there wasn't hardly any real humans left at a certain point. I think everybody was so twisted in some just genetic GMO mush, essentially, that they were not in the image of God anymore.
So, and not only that, I believe it's can be understood that with Nephilim and even other spiritual entities, there was a lot more direct contact with um, these entities that we don't see today. And so part of what you're talking about with the Disney Christian is when Christians get together and rally against Harry Potter when it's first released, we look at these Christians and we're like, you're a bunch of idiots. It's just a fantasy story. When Christians speak out against like anything, let's say the new monster drink called the Bad Apple with a woman holding an apple forward, and we're like, this looks like direct Eve references. Okay, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. The world will paint you as an idiot. Other Christians will paint you as an idiot, and but ultimately, what we're doing is we are normalizing things that are real and that are evil. We're making them into a mockery, and we are making people believe that they are just fantasy. But you look in God's word and witchcraft and all of this stuff, it's real crap. And there was never a time where the Bible says it went away. You can get to pharmacia, of course, and then make some connections with our pharmaceutical industry, with our technology, with the powers that be, with like, oh, do you have a headache? Take this pill. It might
And
make
have
you
15 different side effects. And
it
oh,
might make
well, here's
you
the other
crap
pill.
until you die, and it might make your heart explode, but during that time your headache will probably feel better.
Oh,
Like,
you had an itch on your arm. Well, here, take this pill, and it's gonna make you shit yourself. Like, and the side effect is worse than the what you're taking the medicine for more often than not with the pharmakia.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
And
always. Always.
I think the big issue is as well, and we'll kind of get back into like the preparedness stuff and solutions is I think a lot of Christians do not have a literal interpretation of the Bible. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and guy was Timothy Alberino, which he basically became an alien worshiper, which is one of those influencers that did the disappear thing and then come back 10 years later and has like a totally different message than what they were pushing, 10 years ago. But anyways, but he was even saying, a lot of the stuff like, oh, this prophet didn't actually, speak with God. He just like hallucinated it, or like, Jesus just hallucinated that, and it's like you have to have a literal interpretation of the Bible, which honestly you would see right through the whole alien agenda if you had a literal interpretation of the Bible, because uh, nothing's getting past that firmament at a certain point. But we kind of talked about some of the issues like with the ice raids and stuff like that. What are some solutions that you think people should be looking towards or working on and stuff?
So, my answer to that question, really quick, Matt asked about Ken Ham and the Big Kentucky Ark. Did they get the Noah story right? I'm not familiar with what you're talking about there. I would automatically assume the answer is no, but I don't even know what we're talking about. So,
Well, I think he might be talking about the ARC site there in Kentucky that you could go to. You know what I'm talking about? The big ARC
yeah,
exhibit. I think
okay,
that's what
Arctic
he's
County.
talking about. I'm not totally for sure on that.
I haven't
My
been there yet.
biggest
I
thing
don't know.
with a lot of the portrayals of Noah, and I'm just gonna say this, is because they always, in the Disney World version of Christianity, they always hype up Noah almost as like this borderline caveman that like built this big ship and everybody else was caveman, and that's not how the days of Noah was. I think their technology, quite frankly, surpassed ours today in a lot of ways. And a lot of people has a hard time grasping that because it's hard to think about an age that was more technologically sophisticated than us. But the thing that I have to point out is a lot of these megalithic structures all throughout the world that clearly has water damage to them, we cannot build most of that even today. Like if you look at some of the even largest machines that we have and trying to move even a single block for some of the pyramids, and they can't even, like, the machine will give out before the block will even budge. And
Even
so
more than the pyramids throughout Siberia and other places in the world, there's blocks that they found in structures where the blocks are 100 times any of the blocks of the pyramids. I mean, like,
yeah,
yeah,
and there's
insane.
pyramids all throughout the world too. They just don't point them out. And
Right.
and a lot of times too, the pyramids in like South America, even just 100 years ago, we didn't even know about them. They were completely covered up in brush and everything like that, which tells you sediment got on it. How is sediment gonna get on it?
Right. And not only that, then we found them and we were like, oh yeah, the locals, the indigenous locals built this.
Yeah, there's a big problem with that too, and I'll kind of go on a little rant with this. So one of the biggest ones that they'll hype up is the ones down in Peru, and they'll hype up that the Incas built it. Well, the biggest problem with that is the Incas only had bone and at best bronze chisels. Well, the rock that they use for that is andesite. You have to cut something, you have to have something harder than what you're cutting. I can't use a piece of oak and chisel, a piece of
Right.
granite. And
Right.
it's just like you can't use a piece of bronze and chisel a piece of andesite rock, because the rock is actually harder than this metal is.
Right. But to get back to where the direction we were headed, so the solution here, and my solution is not one that is encouraging or uplifting if you need to find your hope on earth, but um, my solution to everything going on in the news or politics is universal, and that is removing all of that from, like, uh becoming disinvested in the system. It tells us in Ephesians that the whole thing's a freaking puppet show anyways. So in my opinion, becoming so internally invested in the system is kind of like sitting here and watching a show like Game of Thrones, and you become so invested in believing it's real that you think that you're going to write a petition to somebody so that Ned Stark isn't killed. Okay. um no, dude, you're watching a show. It's a puppet show. I- it's fake.
Yeah. Well,
So
they all are fake.
nothing you do matters. The only thing that you can do is believe in its authenticity, become involved, and go get yourself killed for no reason. And
Well,
so
it's
my
just like people thinking that they're going to vote for, the red flavor of baby boomer billionaire pedophile or the blue
right,
flavor baby boomer billionaire pedophile, not realizing that both of them puts on the small hat, both of them goes to the wall, and both of them were friends of Jeffrey Epstein.
right, that's exactly it. So at the end of the day, there's two things here: becoming uh, uninvested in the system. Where do you invest? I would say at your church. All right, not just your community, because people always say just talk to your neighbor. That they're not that much different than the media would have you believe they are. Well, if you're on this path, yes, they are. Communist Russia didn't actually need the secret police to gather most of their information. Most of their information came from grandma on the front porch. Okay. Your neighbor.
Grandma bought into the
Right.
psyop, and
Exactly.
well, it's just like you see even now, a lot of times when you see these like quote red flag gun law things that they do, it's a lot of times it's like the granddaughter or something that's so liberal that she'll just be like, "Oh, I'm so glad that they killed my grandpa," because he had guns or something, and the whole
So,
story was just made up, and
right.
so
Just crap. So the first thing, finding what you are going to invest in, and you can't just invest in your family. Uh, you have to get out a little bit further than that. I would say if you are able, find a church, invest in that. But whatever the case, find your community. And so then part two. Um, so if you want, it doesn't matter who's watching. You do not have the universal experience to have discernment in anything, in everything. I mean, so there's nobody on this earth who you can talk about any subject with, and then they have the discernment in that subject to know what's right or wrong. And so to um, explain that, I was with family, and we were watching Isle of Man TT racing on the motorcycles, and a woman in the family was like, I don't think they should lean over that far in those corners. Like they do not need to do that. That's dangerous." And it's like these guys are doing 200 miles an hour through two-lane roads with brick walls on either side, and you actually think that the angle that they're leaning that bike over in the corner is for fun? No, that's how you turn the bike at that speed. They have absolutely no, but we can't have experience in everything, is what I'm saying. All right, so finally, think about what can be taken away from you.
the
So,
moral of the story is women need to just shut the hell up.
yeah, yeah. Nick Fuentes
I'm
would agree with
kidding.
that.
Well,
So
kind of.
yeah, so okay, this system, the control. So if you talk to someone 150 years ago and they were like, well, why do you care about the government? Well, if I do something wrong, they're going to cut off my electricity. You're like, what? Well, I won't have running water in my house. Who cares? Go get your bucket and get your lazy ass and go get some water. Oh, well,
Yeah.
but they'll close my bank and I won't be able to buy any food. You know, that's obviously coming. Go plant a garden. And what do you even, you could talk to lawyers back then and they're familiar outside of the biggest cities. They're familiar with physical labor, right? Everybody was.
Well,
There
the
was no
people
such
that didn't do that didn't eat. Like
right.
eh,
So comfort is slavery. And think about what they will take from you, not what they could take from you, what they will take from you. So right now we're in this blizzard situation, ice storm, whatever, and we'll probably lose power. But one of the first things we did when we bought this house is I went and I got a wood burning stove, and we've got 5 acres here. And I paid less money for this house and property than I would have paid living in random suburbia, but my priorities were different. Now, I'm not saying that you should try to be like me, but what I'm saying is, and I'm not saying I'm universally prepped, but by Jorge, I'm going to keep this house warm, right? And so, um, what do you rely on? It's what's so funny to me. We just had this guy who talked about how ICE agents are terrorists. So if they come in his house, he'll blast them. And he did all this bragging about what a hard
just a
MF he
lot of
is.
blap blap blap,
Right,
and
right.
then of
And
course they do the like ritualistic perp walk, and that's what kind of gets me about a lot of this ice stuff too. Is okay, right off the bat, do I think some people need to get the boot out of the country? Definitely, but they're almost making a spectacle out of it and not even being functional, and all at the same time. Here they are hyping up like, oh, we've deported, this few thousand people, while they're bringing in 300,000 H-1B visas and building exclusive apartments only for them, and that's even happening locally to me. So there's, rural Missouri getting flooded with thousands of Indians to go work at a data center.
and the irony here is we used to make fun of China for like the Timken Square, the person standing in front of the tanks. And oh, in China, if you try and get in the government's way, they'll just kill you. And conservatives are like, look at those Chinese communists. The government will just kill them if they get in the government's way. And 20 years later, they're like, kill those MFs. They're trying to get in the way of our feds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But okay, so but think about what they could. Okay, so if your life's payments, let's say, go through PayPal, think before you start making threats. If I have to dump PayPal, how's my life going to go? If I lose my bank account, my assets are freezed. Do I have options? It's what's so funny to me about all these people are like, we're real patriots. And if you think we can't take this country back, you're a coward. We're going to take it back by force of arms. And it's like, where you been, dude? I haven't seen your name in the news, but have you thought about the logistical requirements that you would have to have in combat and how you're going to do stuff with your family and money and
A lot
food?
of them are not even physically capable. Even like all that aside, a lot
Yeah,
of them you couldn't hand them a backpack and a carbine and have them go down the
walk
road.
5 miles. No, you can't even walk outside your door. You have no combat experience. You have no idea about anything that you're talking about. But of course, because of the Dunning Kruger effect, you're way up in here in confidence. Okay, so think about logistics and what they will take for you. So now instead of being invested in spending your time with, well, we better elect this new guy this term, this new lizard, you can invest your time in thinking, what can I do for my church community? How can I grow in discernment? How can I grow in my skills? The only thing that they can't take away from you is what you know. Um, and knowing with your head is not the same as knowing with your hands. So you can watch 10 million videos about how to use a ferro rod to make a fire, but if you've never done it before, you will fail.
Well, you know, it's kind
Especially
of interesting is how. So I was running some classes at one point, and it's funny how many times people would say like, "Oh, I know how to do that. I watched a video on it," and like it was almost an every time thing. Like I hate to pick on them, but it was mostly a boomer thing. There was some younger guys, but it was a lot of boomers that would like, "Oh, I watched some videos on it. I don't need like." It's like, no, show me how you actually do. And of course, they always fail. And there was one time I set up a little shooting like course. So I had them. What I was testing was okay. You all are hyping up. You got this like gear and your loadout and everything like that. You're gonna do a quick little like mile run, come around, run through a course, and then shoot a few targets as you go through this course. And it was funny how many of them was just like all their shit's just flopping all over the place, and they were just so dysfunctional. And there was four of them. And they all watched each other do it, and I'm surprised like none of them stopped and like, hey, maybe I should fix that before I do the course. But none of them did. There was like four of them though that put a radio right on their like shoulder strap on their right side, and so they're like they're trying to stock up a rifle, and this radio's like interfering with them even shooting. And it's
because
like,
it's
where
not
did you
someone in
get the
Hollywood
idea
did.
of putting a radio on a shoulder strap like that?
Somebody in Hollywood. So you know, and I ran a group of like-minded individuals for an entire region of the state for a while, and I try and set up trainings, and nobody wanted to do it because all they wanted to do is have barbecues, drink beer, and talk about how they were going to overthrow the government, but they wouldn't actually do any training. But one of the guys who did
Sounds
want
kind
to
of
show
similar to what I dealt with.
Yeah, one of the guys who did want to show up was like, well, here's what I want to do, guys. Like, I want to practice shooting targets accurately while being on the back of an ATV, like your Homestead show that's playing or whatever, like just, bro, how about learn how to shoot and move and communicate? Like, how about learning how to put your face in the ground and try to engage a target at 200 or 300 yards, or
Or
even,
start off by having even a zeroed rifle.
yeah. So you clearly have fantasies about what you would do or will do or what you could do. You need to experience a bit of suck fest first and get grounded a little bit, because when if we do a basic qual from 25 to 300 yards and you can't even qualify in any position that you want, maybe you'll realize it's time to stop fantasizing about shooting off the back of an ATV.
Well, I think
Um,
there's also, and this is something that I brought up to, some of the guys too, is at a certain point, okay, like I get it. Some of us, we all get old and fat and slow and stupid at a certain point too. Like it happens to all of us. And so sometimes being a little bit humble and recognizing, hey, being a door kicker might not be my, job, but if I can run an effective homestead and feed and supply and help out the door kickers, then that might actually be more beneficial. And there's not enough guys actually doing that, to be totally honest. And
so work the garden. You can be old and be an absolute whiz at processing game. You can be organizing, watching doggone kids, learn how to set up all of your radios,
yeah,
you know, all of this other stuff. Yeah, because if you are 50 years old, universally, if you are 50 years old, you do not need to be in any kind of offensive action. And actually, truthfully, with what we're talking about, nobody actually should be in an offensive action. It should all be
defensive in nature.
I mean, it should be basically it should be a battle drill 1 alpha and breaking contact, and that's probably the only things that you need to know, and maybe enough CQB to not die, but probably not even that. And that was another thing everybody asked about. I need you to train us on 1 person CQB. Well, okay, here's how to pie a corner, and for 1 person CQB, here's how to write your will.
Yeah, you're basically gonna die.
That's retarded. So, mindset, tactics, skills, gear. You failed up here. Your mindset is retarded, and therefore your tactics are retarded, and your skills are retarded, and your gear is retarded. So that's foobar from top to bottom. So let's get up here. Let's get this right. That's the other thing too, is when it comes to training or anything else, or even just watching YouTube videos, if what you're consuming is Grand Thumb and Kentucky Ballistics and Brandon Herrera and Black Rifle Coffee, your mindset's wrong.
Yeah.
It's you're like, well, what did they say that's so bad? Look, you get your mindset from these feds right here, and therefore everything below it, priority wise, is retarded. And you're going to go, if you get training, you'll get it from the NRA, and you'll go stand on a square range and spend your time doing Mozambique drills, transitioning from a rifle to a pistol on a square range because you think it's cool, when in reality, you should be getting off the X before anything, and you should never be standing out in the open shooting ever for any reason.
Yeah.
So anyways,
another thing I was gonna kind of bring up. So we're talking about solutions here. So one solution that you kind of brought it up earlier is what can they potentially take away from you to control you. That's what that comes down to. And so one of the things that I would recommend as a solution is I think guys need to focus on. Me and my wife called it just this past year. We're going to prune everything. So we downsized a lot of stuff. We got rid of a lot of extra crap that we don't need. And that's still kind of a process, honestly. But we're completely debt free. And so, and that is a big liberty right there. If you don't have debt, then you don't have to just slave away, and at the same time, I don't trust the US dollar or the system. And so, like, something else that I've been kind of working on is, yeah, I want a little extra money for those like, oh crap, the car broke down type of thing. But at the same time, I don't want just tens of thousands of dollars just sitting in a bank account, because it's not going to mean anything at a certain point, and it's probably going to just, even if the US dollar don't go full blown Weimar Republic, it's becoming more and more and more worthless anyway. And so I'd rather have more tangible assets that
yep.
you can actually use. And one of those tangible assets that I'm glad I hopped on it years and years ago. Um, a little sad, but when my dad passed away, I used a good chunk of a little bit of money that he left me to buy just a bunch of silver. And I always hear it with every prepper type is, oh, you can't eat gold and silver, blah, blah, blah. And here's the thing, you might not even be able to trade it in like a SHTF type of situation. But the reason why I think gold and silver might actually be important is because any SHTF type of situation doesn't last forever. And so gold and silver can help buy you into whatever system comes next, or it can buy you around whatever system comes next.
Right. So I'm gonna have to go here pretty soon, in a second here, but I think a parting topic here is like the mindset should be right. This is the direction that we should be thinking. But on the flip side, if the end state of us or our descendants is this system where we cannot buy or sell, where you will have your um, capabilities cut off, whatever the case may be, we cannot. We need to be doing these things. We need to be owning property. We need to be working on homesteading in all different ways and training. But we also need to remember that you will not become skilled enough to make it through this situation without God's blessing. So we are still reliant on Christ. It should still be a faith issue. You go back 1,000 years to where everybody was self-reliant, and God's people throughout the Bible are still reliant on Christ and on God for and having faith in Him to get them through situations. And so I hear all the time Christians using that as an excuse to do nothing.
Yeah.
But the flip side is also true, to where like you think that you've bought everything that needs to be bought, you've learned everything that needs to be learned, and your faith is in yourself. And man, you can die of something awfully stupid, right? I mean, so we still, as the answer here, investing in yourself, investing in your church, investing in the proper worldview and mindset, instead of investing in the system and whatever stupid crap that they're throwing at you that they're doing right now. There has to be a balance in how you react to that, between thinking that you are going to survive the apocalypse off the sweat of your own back, and thinking God will save me.
You have to have a good balance of both.
Right, right. And you should, God may save you, but chances are He gave you the mindset beforehand to seek this out, because the sluggard, the lazy person, is not being blessed by God. You don't work, you don't eat. So you don't
Yeah.
just sit around starving, and you are not physically fed by your faith. You can't
Yeah.
just say, have faith and be full. So,
Well,
uh,
a couple of things to kind of add on to. Well, actually, they were kind of a couple things you mentioned prior. You earlier mentioned the oh blah 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 militia, we're gonna overthrow, and or fix America, like the whole fix America thing too, like even with MAGA. And it's like, what if I don't necessarily want to fix America? And I know that sounds a little weird, but I don't want to be in the same nation as people that is pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, LQPRS, and all that, because that potentially tarnishes your own people's blessings with God by even associating with that, if that makes any sense.
so
And
I could
so
do a whole live stream on that. I could probably talk for 2 hours about that, literally.
maybe
Um,
maybe we might have to do a specific live stream on that. Like
we
maybe that
should.
would be the next live stream
It
topic.
would be a good topic. But as you fully disassociate, I think the last step here is, first off, realizing that all of the borders are a lie, all of the nations are a lie, all of the governments are a lie. And so I think we need to internalize, like, I'm not an American.
Yeah.
I'm not a Scandinavian American, freaking some subcat. Like, our home is in heaven. We are visiting here. The inhabitants who live here, This is their home. This is where they belong. This is where they'll die. That ain't me. I'm a different entity entirely. And so it doesn't, I don't have to be concerned about the same thing they're concerned about. They're probably NPCs anyways.
Yeah. I one last thing I'd like to bring up too, as far as like the preparedness type of stuff, is I think, and I'm gonna say I even fell into this myself a little bit. Okay, is thinking that like, oh, it's all gonna happen potentially in my lifetime. Blah blah blah. I don't need to worry about wife and kids and all that stuff. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of people, not even just prepared preppers, but even just people in general, has failed, is that we need to start thinking generationally on this stuff, because Satan has been thinking generationally. And so, for all I know, it could not even be in my lifetime. I could be a grumpy ass old man by the time it comes around. And so we have to actually start raising our kids right, and actually start looking at that as not only the next generation, but our greatest asset as well. And
So
I'd rather have two or three squared away little boys than a bunch of dweebs on tablets that can't even hardly talk.
So, and hope I need to wrap this up, but in thinking in that direction, most of our parents and grandparents didn't invest all kinds of money in property so that we could build a house on that property and live with them and build that generational wealth. Our grandparents had a bunch of land so they could farm, and our parents or us ourselves sold a bunch of that land so that we could get quick meth money and buy some 36-inch Gucci rims for our brand new diesel. But right now, if you don't have land so that you can put your kids on your property, they will be slaves.
Well,
They
I mean,
will.
kind of a real quick synopsis of that is the thing that has always separated nobility and peasants was land ownership. If you don't own land, you're a peasant. And I'm not even trying to be an asshole about it. It's just how, and at a certain point, we're all peasants in a sense. But that really did separate people for thousands of years, and there's a reason for that.
It's coming back,
And, but
and it's coming back.
yeah. And so, Jacob, I know you got to get going. So thank you for hopping on here. Always a great conversation. And maybe sometimes we'll have to get into some of the other topics more deeply that we talked about tonight. And guys, thank you all for hopping on. As always, be prepared both physically and spiritually. God bless, and carry on.